Good morning, everyone. Millions of people use infertility treatments to have a baby. This week, new research is linking those treatments to an increased risk for heart and pregnancy-related complications. Mary Maloney takes a look in today's Health Minute.
Shining new light on infertility treatments. New research finds women who used assisted reproductive technology have increased risk for vascular and pregnancy-related complications compared to those who don't.
And these can include placental abruption or increased risk of C-section, small babies, preterm deliveries, things like that.
The study in the Journal of the American Heart Association found women who used infertility treatments had more pre-existing health conditions, including high blood pressure and diabetes when they started the treatment. The women were also 38% more likely to need a cesarean delivery and 26% more likely to have the baby born prematurely. Infertility specialist Dr. Sigal Klipstein says that's not surprising.
The findings are confirming things that we already know, that women who have cardiovascular risk factors when they're entering a pregnancy do have increased risks.
This study also found increased risk for women who underwent fertility treatments even when they had no pre-existing symptoms of heart disease. Dr. Klipstein says underlying infertility, not the fertility treatment, is often what's linked to worse outcomes. A key limitation of the study was that it did not compare different fertility treatments. Dr. Klipstein says that's an important distinction.
A woman who maybe needed a short course of fertility pills and became pregnant very quickly is different from a woman who required multiple rounds of IVF.
For today's Health Minute, I'm Mary Maloney.
Now, in the study, researchers compared more than 106,000 deliveries where the baby was conceived involving assisted reproductive technology to more than 34 million births conceived without infertility treatment. Andy Amirlis is a veteran producer at CBS News. 10 years ago, at 46 years old, he had a heart attack. He says he was blindsided by the event and didn't recognize the signs. It is a common theme. Dr. Tara Narula sat down with Andy to give us a look at what those closed-door conversations with your doctor can look like.
I had no idea that anything was brewing, right? And I was in Atlantic City with Jeff Galore to cover Superstorm Sandy.
Good morning to you, and we have seen the rain and wind pick up significantly here in Atlantic City.
And coming home, I remember just how exhausted I was, like a level of exhaustion I hadn't felt before. That next Tuesday was the election night for the second Obama term, and I remember I worked overnight. And then when I woke up Thursday morning, I woke up with a searing pain right in the middle of my chest. I didn't know what it was, but I don't think I'm atypical of men in this world who just think, oh, I'll get over it.
Did you think it could be your heart or something serious?
I don't remember having that thought until I was on my way to the ER. I walked 10 blocks to the ER while having a heart attack, which I didn't realize.
So you still didn't think it was serious enough that you should be calling an ambulance?
That's correct. That's correct.
Having someone drive you there?
And I'm also really cheap, so I didn't want to pay for an ambulance. Like, I would have crawled. Then they did some blood work, and then I looked up from my bed, and the attending physician was walking towards me at a very rapid pace. And she came and she said that it was a heart attack and they were going to rush me right up to catheterization and get a couple of stents. Now I was scared. I was thinking about, you know, I had 3 kids at home. My girls were 7 and my son was 11. So they were young, and both my grandfathers died of heart attacks. You know, those things start to go through your head.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 46. I just didn't think 46-year-olds get heart attacks. I look back at pictures of me from then, and I was a gelatinous mess, and I didn't realize that, but like, I was much heavier than I am now. I was out of shape.
So you had 2 stents placed into one artery in your heart.
Correct.
You mentioned the stress of working as a producer at CBS News for so many years.
Yeah.
Obviously, it took a physical toll, but what about the emotional or mental toll of the kind of work that you do?
We tell some stories that are tough to tell. I don't think that even to this day I acknowledge what that might have done to me. I think that we sort of compartmentalize that. But the one thing I didn't tackle for years was the stressors. And also, one of my children is pretty profoundly autistic, so there's a lot of stress with a special needs child in terms of just day-to-day living. And her sleep habits are terrible, so for many years I wasn't getting any sleep, so that added a lot of stress too.
So you're constantly on high alert.
Yeah, there's no exhaling.
And so you came to see me in 2018. You told me you were going to be preparing to run the Empire State Building.
Right. You said it's been a while since we've seen inside your arteries. We should do that. But they found it was like an 80% blockage in a much more profoundly important artery. This was an event there could have been much more serious than the one I had.
And throughout it all, you have not lost your sense of humor.
Oh, no. No, in fact, I used to do stand-up comedy, and I made some good mileage out of my heart attack.
I recently had a heart attack. It was not fatal.
Making people laugh and laughing yourself is just wonderful. It's such a release, and you know, it also keeps you from taking yourself too seriously.
So after your heart attack, what kinds of changes did you make in your life?
The first changes I made were diet and exercise. And the biggest change I've made, you know, in that regard is that I don't look back and regret things, because regret is waste. What I've learned to do is to take things that I cannot control and stop obsessing over them, stop worrying about them. I think I'm a lot less cynical than I once was.
So you're training for a half marathon.
Oh, yeah. I'm now training for this half marathon, but there's nothing I can do about what happened in the past, except for learn the lessons of that, right? And so that meant doing everything I can to prevent it from happening again. You know, eating better, staying in shape. Life is a lot more fragile than you think. People would say, you got to get some sleep. I don't sleep when I'm dead. And then when you realize that maybe you were closer to sleeping than you knew.
What do you hope that people who are listening take away from this conversation?
What I think is important is that you do your best to recognize what's going on in your life and take charge of it where you can. But just because I had the heart attack doesn't mean that it's all over. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You can come back from problems and come back better, and you can do it without wallowing in regret. Or if you watch me and you say, that could be me tomorrow, then